Thank you very much for those that are joining us online. My name is George Atala, the NFL Players Association. Wanted to welcome everybody to the NFL Players Association GQ and BWB draft event here in New York City. Want to give a quick shout out and thanks to our friends at Google. We are here at the Google headquarters broadcasting live in New York. I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Devin Gordon from GQ, to introduce our first panel. You'll hear from them for 30 to 35 minutes, and then we'll take a short break, have our second panel come on, and then DeMaurice Smith will be joining us around 11 a.m. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out. My name is Devin Gordon. I'm the articles editor with GQ Magazine, and I head up a lot of our football coverage. We don't have a lot of time, and we got a lot of really fascinating panelists, so I'm going to introduce them quickly and try to get to some questions. On my left here is Matt Ufford, who's one of the most adored writers on the web about the NFL. He's shaking his head because he thinks that's not true, but he's awesome. And he's written for a bunch of places, including GQ. Keith Bulluck, to my left, feared defensive player for the Titans for many, many years, now retired, correct? Yes. We've got Greg Cosell of NFL Films. We have Anita Marks here from, is it NBC Sports, right?
NBC Sports Radio.
NBC Sports Radio. And Eric Winston, a feared offensive tackle. If you've got a few $1 million and an NFL team, he might come block for you this year. They've been signed in the last hour, right? Yeah. There's no, we're still waiting, right?
On the street.
Got it. Okay.
How come I'm not feared, by the way?
Well,
you said that
you may
about
have,
Keith and.
Well, look at the size differential here, man. I mean, we got to get about 100
So
more
I have to eat
pounds
a lot,
before.
is that
Yes,
it?
exactly.
Okay.
I'm going to start with Eric because I'm curious on draft day. If you're waking up this morning, you're a college athlete. What does it feel like? You went in the third round, right?
Yeah.
So you had to wait a little while.
Yeah.
What does that feel like?
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough, especially, it depends what your expectations are too. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, agents do a good job of probably quelling expectations. And sometimes it's not just the agent's fault, it's also GMs. You take some of these visits and the GMs, and they kind of, for whatever reason, they don't have to recruit you, but they sell you kind of a bill of goods. I had a GM tell me that there's no way you're not going to go in the first round. Wow. I had an offensive coordinator who became a head coach in the league say, you better be ready to play it. I think they picked at 20. You better be ready to play. If you get to 20, we're taking you. So you have this expectations going in, and you're thinking, hey, there's no way I'm going to get past here. There's no way. And then when the free fall starts, it gets a little antsy.
Yeah. So were you at home? Where were you? You weren't actually
I
there.
have a kind of an interesting draft day experience. I went home, went to back to Midland, Texas. That's where I'm originally from. And a family friend of ours threw a big draft day party. And you're thinking, okay, it's going to last a couple hours, and I'll be out of here. It's going to be perfect, right? And so the picks start coming in, and I think every player probably has about 5 teams that really like them, 5 teams that probably wouldn't take them no matter what, and then everything else is just kind of value in between. If you're at the right slot and you're there, a team will take you. And so it just so happened the draft probably felt like the worst way possible that could for me. Either they traded the pick, the team that liked me, they took an offensive lineman that was rated ahead of me. Everything that happened could have bad did. And so, I had a bunch of friends there. They were trying to do something. The party definitely went, right down when we're about pick 25 or so, and you're seeing other tackles that no one's talking about. So we had a good idea of like every offensive lineman that went off the board after about the second or third guy, we should just shotgun a beer. And so,
So how are you?
not knowing we're going, not knowing I'm going to the third, I'm thinking, okay, a couple more and we'll be done here. So, Jeremy
12 beers later.
Jeremy Truemore goes off the board, Cook goes off the board, Devin Joseph goes off the board, and we're just in the backyard, one after another. By the time I got picked, the second pick of the third round, actually the Houston Texans had the first and the second pick of the third round, and they picked the first pick, they picked Charles Spencer, and I'm really thinking, because they had called a couple times in the week leading up to it, and so you felt like there was a little bit of interest. And then they went with Charles Spencer, another tackle, coincidentally, or guard tackle there. So we ran right out into the backyard again. And so then my phone rings, and I'm like, oh, it's Houston. And it's Mike Sherman, who was the assistant head coach and offensive line coach at the time. So he said something like, are you ready to play? And I'm like, are you taking me? Because if not, I got to go shotgun another beer. I didn't say that to him, but that's what I'm thinking in the back of my head. And of course, then they take me kind of as dual picks, and my draft day was over. And like I said, the expectations for me, I was thinking late first, early second, going all the way in the third. It was disappointing for me, but it ended up being the best thing that could have happened. I fit perfectly into the zone scheme that Gary Kubiak brought in the same year. I wasn't ready to play, but at the same time, I had a chance to go on a team that we weren't very good, but it was okay in a way because we were playing a lot of young guys, and I got a lot of reps. Probably if I was on a better team, I probably wouldn't have. Mm-hmm. And it helped me develop, and it helped me become an NFL player. So there's a good and bad that goes on in it.
Keith, I'm gonna skip over this way because you had a slightly different story. You went 30th. Were you expecting to go around there, or was that lower than you were expecting? Higher?
It was a little bit lower than I expected to go. I feel everybody that's projected first-round draft pick feels, unless you're number one, you feel like you should go higher than you should go. But my situation was a little different. I got drafted to Tennessee, number 30, which I really didn't expect. I was the best player available for about 10 picks. So when y'all are watching the draft and you see best player available, I was that guy for about 10 picks. And, I was the 5th linebacker taken in the first round. It was LeVar Arrington, Brian Urlacher, Julian Peterson, Rob Morrison. Actually, John Abraham was outside linebacker at the time. So, yeah, and I was in that group. And, when I got the call, I actually had went outside to shoot basketball. We had a draft party at my brother's house. So I went outside to shoot basketball because after the 49ers took Julian Peterson, I had no clue where I was going to go. Maybe we thought New York because they had the Jets. They had 4 first-round draft picks that year. They didn't take me. And the
that
Giants,
makes sense.
they took Ron Dane. Right, absolutely. So anyway, long story short, when I finally got the call, they took Rob Morris, the Colts, then R.J. Sauer, and then by then my stomach was in knots because the first round is almost over. I just want to be a first-round draft pick. The Saints called me. They had the first pick of the second round. I didn't want to be a second-round draft pick, but yeah, when Jeff Fisher called me, I actually was indisposed. I was in the bathroom. That's when I got the call. And you ready to be a Titan? Yeah, just a minute. It's a true story.
Do you think falling a little bit helped you guys? I mean, you talked about how you wound up in the right situation, but I'm also wondering, you often hear about guys when they're watching people go ahead of them that they think they're better than, or that they've been rated higher than. Does that change your attitude about about your career and your approach?
It did for me because I wanted to be Rookie of the Year. That didn't happen. I was blessed to go onto a team, the Tennessee Titans, that just came from the Super Bowl. They came up a yard short. John Thornton in the back room was a teammate of mine. I was fortunate to go on a team with a tremendous amount of leaders: Steve McNair, Eddie George, Blaine Bishop. The list goes on. I didn't start until my 3rd year, although I did play roles as I became older in the league. So that made me hungrier. And then as soon as I touched the field, I became and continued to grow into the player that I eventually became.
Well, Anita, I want to go to you next because you have a different. You've seen this from the other perspective, from the GM perspective, from the executive perspective. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about. You have a good story about how Joe Flacco came in the pick and became the guy for the Baltimore Ravens.
Absolutely, I do, but I would like to share with you the Tom Brady story. If anyone here hasn't heard it, it's my favorite draft story. Pretty cool. He told this story at Media Day in Phoenix when the Patriots were getting ready to take on the Giants, and he said that he was watching the draft with his family. And each round was going, and he was not being selected, and he kind of excused himself from his family and went into his room and had a really hard cry. And then grabbed a piece of paper and started writing other career choices because he did not feel that he was going to get drafted and be a starting quarterback in the NFL. And sure enough, his mom knocked on the door and told him the Patriots had selected you. And then look at him now. So I think it's a very inspirational story, and he shared it, and I just thought it was one of the best draft stories I've heard. So I just want to share that with you.
And tell me about Joe Flacco, because you heard about this.
Yes, Joe Flacco.
This is our, Super Bowl winning quarterback, right?
I feel very fortunate. I covered the Ravens for 4 years, and now I'm heading into my 4th year with the Giants. And each organization operates with the draft and free agency differently. And for example, the Giants, it's all about their scout department. It's all about Jerry Reese. Yes, at times they do talk to the coaching staff, but at the end of the day, The decision is made with the scouting department and Jerry Reese who they're going to draft. For the Baltimore Ravens, it's a little different. They incorporate their staff, kind of their wardroom is a little bit more of an open forum, and the Ravens really coveted Matt Ryan. In fact, there were some reports that the Ravens were talking to the Atlanta Falcons in regard to possibly having a trade. From what I understand, the Falcons were interested in Terrell Suggs. Maybe that was too hefty of a trade to make in exchange for their first-round pick for Matt Ryan. And at the time, their quarterback coach stood up in the war room and said, with all due respect, Steve Bisciotti, Matt Ryan's not the best quarterback in this draft. Joe Flacco is. And you can get him much later on in the draft. And so with discussion, they decided to forego the conversation with the Atlanta Falcons and the trade that was going on. If you recall, they ended up trading down and then trading back up, and they got Joe Flacco. And here we are today, Joe Flacco, MVP of this year's Super Bowl, highest paid quarterback right now in the NFL. And the big reason was the quarterback coach felt that Joe Flacco had a better arm and could make all the throws on the football field that Matt Ryan could not. But Matt Ryan, if you recall again, was very charismatic and very open, where Joe Flacco is somewhat of, as what does his father call him?
I think he called him a boring guy.
A boring guy.
Yeah.
So
Dull guy. I think called him a dull
right.
guy.
It's just very interesting how every organization operates differently, and not to say that one's right and one's wrong, because look, both the Baltimore Ravens and the Giants are very successful organizations. Each year they're in it to win it. So I don't know if there's a right or wrong formula, but everybody does it differently.
Well, I wanted to ask Greg a little bit about the event itself, because here we are sitting, beaming out over the internet. We got a 3-day nationally televised event. And I was watching that ESPN documentary. I don't know if some of you saw it, this 30 for 30 thing called From Elway to Marino. That was
Which
about
we did at Films, yes.
Yeah, it was it's great. And it's, you look back at the 1983 draft, and they got the cool helmet phones. And
by the way, there was no internet in the 1983 draft.
no internet.
No
internet then. Not that we could use.
Right,
Al Gore
right.
hadn't invented it yet. And it's a hotel ballroom and it's NFL execs. Was it even televised then? I don't even know.
Well, I can tell you the story. I've been with NFL Films for 34 years. Mm-hmm. And back in the day, the draft was on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and it would start at 8 in the morning. And do you remember that? And just to give you an example, this was before Chris Berman was Boomer. He was just Chris Berman, mm-hmm. Okay? So he'd start doing the draft, and at NFL Films, we'd put it on in the theater, and everybody would bring bagels in, and it wasn't an event by any means. You literally had to just be in the business. And the business was by no means as big as it is now in terms of coverage. I mean, obviously, there's no social media. There was nothing. It was just for a bunch of geeks, football people who were curious, whose job it was. Obviously, it was part of my job. So you'd watch the draft, and it was on a Tuesday, and it seemed that there was so much time. I think there was 15 minutes then, even in the second and third rounds, and it seemed interminable. I mean, you just sat there, and you sat there, and you sat there, and you would watch this, and it went on forever.
It still kind of does.
Yeah, but at least
So
they
much better now, though.
at least
It's
they
so much
speed it
better.
up rounds, starting Friday night now. They've speeded up rounds 2 and 3. What's that? It was 12 rounds too. That's correct. So it just and back at that point, someone like Mel Kiper was probably the only one, because he was one of the first who was just a nutcase about all this. He was one of the only guys, if not the only one, who could tell you when some guy was drafted in the 4th round from South Dakota State, and no one knows anything about these guys. They don't even know the names of these guys. Whereas now, with social media, with everything, you know about what these guys did when they were 3 years old. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But I mean, so in some ways, and I'm sure, Eric could probably address this, but nowadays, I think it's a totally different experience for the players. Not just because there's events, mm-hmm. but just in the way that they're evaluated and judged. Not by people in the business. Theoretically, people in the business shouldn't be affected by all this stuff. I guess it's personal. Anita could probably address this, talking to GMs a lot, if they're affected by all the coverage and whether they think they have to go win the press conference now after they make a pick. I don't think it was like that back in the 80s. I think it was considered much more of a secret society, and I think there are certain GMs and teams that still view it that way, mm-hmm. but I think some of them recognize that it's hard to keep it a secret society now, that there's a little more transparency just by the nature of everything that's out there. But it just reminded me hearing everybody talk about back in the 80s when, you know, we used to bring the donuts, the bagels, the cream cheese, and sit at NFL Films in our theater, and there'd be 15 or 20 of us in there, you know, watching the draft. And that's what it was. And I'm not sure that there were much more than 15 or 20 people in the rest of the country at that time watching the draft.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about tonight's draft, Matt, because we have a situation where the event itself has never been bigger. But this particular draft, you know, there's going to be offensive linemen at the top, defensive linemen at the top. You don't have the big name RG3 or Andrew Luck. How scintillating is this draft going to be for the lay fan who may not know a lot of the guys who are playing in the trenches?
I think it's going to be kind of a test for the NFL and how deep fandom runs, because it's already, the NFL draft is already kind of a stretch for a lot of NFL fans, where it's like, it's not an exciting event, but it's all we got until September. So we kind of like it's like, all right, I'm tuning in because this is the only chance that I've got to care about my team, to have news about my team. And yeah, I mean, but I think that the average NFL fan is getting smarter, is getting savvier. They're more interested in line play. And so the average fan recognizes that while offensive tackle isn't as exciting as getting that playmaking quarterback, you know, it's still a key thing to not everybody can be Eric Winston. But no, I think that the average NFL fan is smarter, is savvier, is more likely to be excited about an anchor on the defensive line or offensive line.
What are the real question here is, what are the odds that Jets fans are going to boo their first two picks tonight?
110%.
110%. There's nothing.
Regardless of who they are?
It's just tradition.
Is there any outcome
It's just
in that
tradition.
ninth pick that Jets fans will not boo?
Unless they take a quarterback.
Unless they take a quarterback.
So I bet you if they take Austin, they won't boo.
Yeah, I would agree.
I bet if they take Austin from West Virginia, they won't boo.
Okay.
They'll be excited about that. Everybody else is getting booed.
Okay. Everybody
No
else.
doubt about it.
Well, I wanted to talk about the dynamic. Anita, we had talked a little bit beforehand about the sort of delicate dance that GMs and coaches have to do, you know, if you draft a running back with your first pick, as
Right.
you know, the Giants drafted a running back last
And
year.
David Wilson.
And had some running backs to explain this to, right? So
Well, I wouldn't say explain it to, but you know, it definitely a phone call was made to Ahmad Bradshaw prior to the draft pick to say, look, you're still the #1 guy. This guy's coming in. He's going to compete with you, but you're still it in the backfield. Now,
How's that for him now?
well, yeah. but you know, it was an interesting dynamic because, again, keep in mind, David Wilson did not necessarily, and who knows if he does fit the Kevin Gilbride scheme. So that was kind of one of the advantages for Ahmad Bradshaw, is that David Wilson is an unbelievable talent, and I have no doubt that he's going to be a sensational running back in the NFL, but it's going to be a transition for him. So it was great that they had Ahmad Bradshaw there. So I don't feel that there was so much of a competition because Bradshaw knew the scheme, but I'm sure that there's other situations that aren't that.
Well, if you get taken, if someone at your position gets taken in the first round, your days are numbered, no matter what. No, but I don't care how good you are. If you're taken, if you're a tackle, if you're a defensive end, unless they're playing at the opposite position, unless you're a defensive end, they're going to play on the opposite. I mean, if you're a middle linebacker and they take a linebacker or a middle linebacker, and they're going to play him, if his future's at middle linebacker, whether how good you are, they have other plans. There's no way they're taking a first-round pick, especially in the top 20, to just say, you know what, we're going to have him as a reserve.
So not necessarily
all
even if
right.
it's that guy. That guy could wash out. What you're saying is it means that in that front office's head, they were thinking about other things.
Yeah, there's no way they were ever going to, while Bradshaw was on the roster last year, there was no way they were going to repay him after taking David Wilson in the first round.
And I'll go one step further. It's not just the first rounders. I mean, it's when a general manager spins a pick on a player, that's his guy. And that guy is going to have preferential treatment because that's his guy. So that's where the politics is involved when it comes to drafting. I mean, you know, you can look across the board.
The only nicer thing is as the draft goes on, they don't have to nearly explain it as much.
Right.
You know, if they miss with a 4th rounder or a 5th rounder, yeah, we wish we had that pick back, but it's not a big deal. They're gonna make sure that first rounder gets on the field and has every chance to succeed, or the second rounder has every chance to succeed or fail, and they're going to get multiple chances, like she's saying. That's when the politics come in.
And I think it's true. It's more true than ever at quarterback. If you draft a quarterback in the first round, the days of, well, we'll bring him in, we've got a veteran, he'll sit, those days are over. As soon as Roger Goodell announces the quarterback in the first round, particularly if it's top 10 or top 15, he's the starting quarterback. That's just the way it works
And
now.
the Browns did that with Brandon Weeden last year. He was taken barely in the first round.
That's just the way, he was 22nd, I believe. That's just the way it works now. And one other thing, you're talking about running back, and this gets into what I've learned over the years, the big discussion that is huge at this time of year of value, which everybody likes to talk about. To me, this is a philosophical abstraction. You talk to coaches, they don't talk about value. Because when it's week 6 and you're in a game and you're up by 2 with 6 minutes to go and you got to run the ball, they don't think about, well, gee, they said we could get a good running back in the 5th round. They want a running back.
Yeah.
So
Somebody who can get the 2 yards.
right.
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
you're a team that feels like you need to run the ball to be successful offensively, it's a good idea to take a running back, especially when you have rated higher than another one.
Well, so one of the things you keep hearing from GMs and front office types now, especially if they've got a pick in the top 15 or top 20, is that they'll often say, we're not drafting to need, we're just going to take the best guy on the board. Is that true? That's a lot.
It's the best guy on the board at a position of need.
Correct.
It's not, they're not, if you're the Ravens, they're not, their highest rated player at that point is Matt Barkley. They're not taking Matt Barkley.
Right.
But they're going to take the highest rated position player at that
And it's usually not going to be that far off. So let's say you have the 19th pick in the draft.
Yeah.
Okay? And you need a middle linebacker. I guess the Giants are 19th this year. And you need a middle linebacker. If you have a middle linebacker rated 27th, you'll take him. Now if your first middle linebacker is rated 55th, you might not take him.
Trade out.
But if he's rated relatively close to where you are and you view it as a major position of need, you're going to take that guy.
See, but I think it's based on the team, because I'll tell you what, Jerry Reese does take best player available. Did not expect Prince Amukamara to be available at 19, and he took him. JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul, did not expect him to be there, took him. And now Giants need a right tackle. Need a right tackle. I guarantee you, Jerry Reese is enamored by athleticism.
Gosh,
no offense.
are there any right
no
tackles in the room?
If Rhodes,
I'm in New York. Paging Jerry Reese. I'm in New York.
You got him on speed dial?
If there's a really great athletic player who can help him at corner, defensive line, getting after that quarterback, I don't think Jerry Reese can pass him up, even though their biggest need is right tackle right now. Can you play right tackle?
I've been known to.
Okay.
I play one on TV. How about that?
Well, let's talk about. Can we talk a little bit about the run-up to the draft and how these players are evaluated? There was a lot of conversation about Wonderlic, combines, interviews, all of these metrics that we hear about as fans and journalists covering the game. And you started to hear a lot more this year, I felt like, about how ineffective a lot of them were, that people were starting to see through a lot of this stuff, seeing through a 40 time, seeing through the validity of a Wonderlic test. I'm wondering if players can...
I think for me, now that I'm on the other side, I just turn on the tape. The film
There you
doesn't
go.
lie. I feel if you played this game long enough and you know what you're looking for, I can go watch 10 minutes of a particular linebacker play, or any position, really. Maybe not so much tackles or anything like that, but skill position, and tell what type of player he is. And the only thing you really cannot gauge, you continuously hear, is heart, because a lot of these players play at small schools or play at these schools where they don't get as much recognition. And I saw that, take it to Tom Brady, the Brady Six. I remember when he was at Michigan, I never understood why they would always try and put Drew Hinton in. Being from Syracuse, we played them my junior and senior year. And then when I saw that show, he talked about how after the game on Saturday, he would have to come in on Monday not knowing if he's going to be the starting quarterback. So, I had some of that in my career, so I could relate to that. And that's what you can't measure from watching film. So that's how, you see these guys emerge and develop. You can't measure those type things, but as far as seeing what type of player they are, you can watch college film, but then also you have to factor in, when they get that money, are they going to be as motivated to be that same player they were in college in the NFL?
To me, it starts with the film, and because fans don't have access to college coaching tape. They can't see guys play in college on tape. They can watch now YouTube highlights. They can see highlights, which is not the same as watching a player play 70, 80 snaps 7, 8 times in a game. And to me, and again, I don't work for a team. You know, I don't even play a GM on TV like you play a tackle. But I think that when people get too focused on things that are not about the game on the field, such as 40 times, such as vertical jumps and 3 cones, do they help you validate or verify? Absolutely. Or sometimes they might make you go back and watch a guy again. But if you're truly going to get up on the table and say, we should take a guy because he has a great vertical jump, I kind of think you're missing the point here.
I work with a lot of college football writers who just beat their heads against the wall come draft time because of the combine coverage and the Mel Kipers who get excited about this guy's got long arms. He's got a really big vertical jump. And it's just like, this guy was just amazing in college. He can play football, and like we've watched him play, he's amazing. Russell Wilson's a great example. Everybody I know who followed the college game is like, he's going to be great in the NFL. Everybody who was just strictly NFL fans are like, too short. So I think that, again, like there's some blowback, there's some pushback from fans of the college game that are like, hey, the guy who plays really well in college probably has a better chance of playing well in the NFL on average.
Keith, you might be able to talk about this too, because this is the one thing I look at outside the measurables, outside the film. Don't you feel like, and I feel like this, the really good players I've been around have similar personalities and they're similar kind of people. And that's the one thing that I always find interesting coming in the first round, second round picks when we get our new draft and go talk to them, what kind of guys are there. And to me, you can kind of tell, I feel like I can tell a little bit talking to them, hanging around them a little bit, how successful they're going to be and what kind of, it's not always a foolproof thing, but just the way they do things, just the way they handle themselves as a rookie and the way they interact, the way they go have a meal with them or something like that. I don't know if you've had that same experience. I feel like I've had the good players that I've been around are kind of similar creatures in the same way that the way they handle themselves, the way they conversate, their intelligence level. I don't know if Keith's ever been around that kind of same thing, but that's the way I feel.
I think there are players that are football players, and there are players that play football. And I think the football players are the guys that understand the whole gambit of the NFL, everything that it embodies on and off the field. Now, branding is so important and so much a part of our community and society. I think these young guys are learning that, and they're starting to realize that there's a maturity and more of a responsibility that comes with playing in any league. And the football players get that, and they're very much into their football. They're very much into bettering themselves, on the field. They want to immediately, rookies that are into their football, they immediately want to get into the room and learn their film, learn, the system, meet with their coaches, whereas some immediately want to go to South Beach, go to, go hang out, and then come in out of shape. And, maybe for their first couple years, they're athletic enough and talented enough to get away with it. But there's going to come a time where you have to, have that responsibility and maturity, and it's better to have it as a rookie than, try and develop it later in your career and when it's pretty much, too late.
Too late, yeah. Well, Eric, I wanted to follow that thought a little bit farther because it's interesting. You could say, like, you're having a conversation with someone. What kind of things are you seeing where you have the flip side reaction where you think, this guy, not going to happen?
Well, how many times, you look at certain position groups like a tackle, like how many good, I guess, offensive linemen out there have been just non-talkative, non-conversationalist, you look through history, the good offensive linemen, they're actually pretty fun to talk to too, and I've met a lot of them. And so I've noticed that in the similar personality traits that completely off the field, nothing to do with running or jumping, nothing to do with anything. How many of them are very aloof and just not fun to be around? I don't know many of those guys. How many good cornerbacks in the league right now are guys that are they're kind of the same way. You look at the Champ Baileys, the Dale Rivas, they're well-spoken guys. They're guys that like Keith, I think, is talking about, they get it. They get the kind of what the whole gamut of being a pro athlete are. They have that confidence. And That's kind of the one thing I've done the last couple of years is I try to go talk to some of the rookies and see, what kind of people are they, and kind of, and I don't obviously have any control over anything, so my judgments don't matter. But it's interesting to see which one of those guys kind of make it and which ones don't. And I think that certain personality traits I think really play a part in that. And I don't know how many you go. Obviously, it has to be off the film. It has to be what kind of player you are. But I don't think teams do enough of looking at personality traits, looking at what kind of people they are, what kind of are they alpha type people? Are they are they fun people to be around? Are they the BYMs, the BMOCs of their campus, of college? To me, some of the times those guys are ends up being the good players as well, and I don't think it's by accident.
Yeah. Well, we have just a couple minutes left, so let's follow that thought through to what's going to happen tonight. Who are the guys tonight that fit description that you just made? I mean, who are the guys that we're going to be talking about tomorrow? Who are the teams that are going to feel good about what they did come this time tomorrow?
Well, everybody's going to feel good about what they did. There's not going to be a team that comes out and, man, we really messed this one up.
Every GM's going to say this is the guy we had targeted.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah.
That's the way it works.
How many of them are going to be telling the truth?
Well, that we can't answer.
Every
we
team
don't know
will
what their
say-
draft board looks like. So
Every
that's-
team's going to say this is who we had targeted, and every agent's going to say, I can't believe this guy fell to you. Every
Exactly.
player's going to be disappointed with where they went, except like the first 5 guys. So
I think personally in this draft, minus a couple teams are just going to be forced to make a move because I don't think this draft is as rich in talent as the past drafts. But teams are going to make a move that they feel is going to make their team better. And when the season comes, we'll be determined how good that move was.
I don't think there's a lot of what would be called blue chippers in this draft, guys that automatically are seen as sort of transcendent at their positions, where you say, even the 2 tackles, my study of them, I would say that pretty much everybody likes them, but I don't think anybody would say that either of those guys are Orlando Pace, Jonathan Ogden, or Walter Jones, for instance. So, I think that they're good players and they'll probably be 10-year starters. And we'll see what happens once they get into the league. But I don't think they're evaluated now as being at the level of those guys.
I'm hearing the same thing, and I'm hearing that a lot of teams want to trade down. But a lot of the philosophy is you don't pick up the phone and call a team to trade down. You typically pick up a phone to call a team to try to trade up.
Yeah.
So teams are going to be sitting there. I think we're going to see like the full amount of time, whether it's 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, teams and GMs waiting for the phone to ring, somebody call me who wants to trade up, because typically you don't call to trade down. I think it's going to be probably the longest draft, I have a feeling, that we've witnessed in a while.
Well, speaking as a Jets fan, I'm glad we give up
gonna
our
boo?
best player
Are you gonna boo?
to get into this draft. Then that makes me feel great about
So are you
our
going to boo when they
prospects.
make their pick, Devin?
I tend to boo. I do.
Just
Is
as
it a habit?
just as a
Is it a habit at
reflex?
this point?
Just as a reflex?
I mean, look, it's been beaten into me over time
Okay.
that if you boo, it's probably the right reaction. So, it's unfortunate. Let's hope
9 out of 10 times
let's
you're
hope
right.
we break it this time. But if history is a guide, I'll be booing and I'll be right. Thanks everybody for having us here. I hope you enjoyed the talk, and you've got another one coming up right after us. So thanks to the panelists for coming out.